Testimonies, it is a political act, a collective refusal to stay silent. It lays bare the pain of Kuki-Zo women who have been displaced, raped, denied healthcare, and forgotten by the very systems meant to protect them. This book is a confrontation with state failure, societal indifference, and the violence of silence. The Manipur conflict, driven by deep-rooted ethnic hatred and the dominance of a multi-controlled state apparatus, has produced a form of violence that is not only physical but symbolic. Women's bodies have become battlegrounds. The contributors to Silent Scars give voice to this pain. Their work is vital. Dr. Hoyeni Sithau and Dr. Josephine Kipgen write powerfully on how social media has been weaponized by the dominant Meitei narrative and has incited gender-based hatred, legitimized voyeurism, and amplified violence. Mercy Kipgen documents the state's brutal role in this conflict, how security forces and political institutions have either stood by or actively participated in the trauma of Kuki-Zo women. Dr. Nyamthan Ngai Guthe shows how public health infrastructure collapsed, forcing pregnant Kuki-Zo women to give birth in forests without food, medicine, or sanitation. Her work reveals the crisis not just as an ethnic but humanitarian. Hangolin Haukip interrogates customary law and its patriarchal underpinnings, challenging the internal structures within the Kuki-Zo society that have long silenced women and resisted statutory protections. Zalen Numai highlights the various violence committed against women in recent times, leading to the movement for an equitable society, wherein resistance from the patriarchal setup is softly experienced. Pipi Chongloi, who has recently founded an NGO, shares her experience of providing mental health support to victims in the Churchanpur relief camps. Her work challenges the hold of hegemonic masculinity, a norm that discourages emotional vulnerability in men by creating safe spaces where male victims are encouraged to express their grief and trauma. Together, these authors do more than inform, they demand accountability. Their essays show that gender-based violence is not a byproduct of war, it is a part of the strategy, whether through mass displacement, rape, denial of healthcare, or cultural erasure. These are acts of calculated dehumanization. The heart of this book lies in its documentation of 73 pregnant women who survived through unthinkable circumstances and in the remembrance of those who did not. Some were raped and murdered, some were burned or shot. Others were paraded naked, their bodies turned into battlegrounds. These women were not just collateral damage, they were targeted and they deserve justice. We have also compiled, with the help of volunteers and families, lists of childbirths in camps, of women who died, and those still in urgent need of medical care. These records are not just footnotes, they are testimonies. They are proof, and in a time when denial and distortion run rampant, they are necessary. This book is not exhaustive. Many voices remain unheard. Many names are still unknown, but this is a beginning, a refusal to let the stories die in silence. But this book does not stop at the state. It also challenges us within the Kuki community. For too long, customary practices and traditional leadership have sidelined women's voices. Silent Scars is a call for introspection, a challenge to our patriarchal norms, a demand for Kuki-Zo women to be heard, protected and empowered, not just in times of crisis, but always. This volume is also a legal and political intervention. It pushes for statutory protections, legal recognition of gender-based crimes, and policy reforms rooted in lived realities, not theoretical frameworks. And above all, Silent Scars is a refusal to forget. Every name of every woman raped, burned, denied childbirth assistance, or still waiting for justice is not a number. It is a life silenced not only by gunfire, but by the indifference of institutions, the silence of society, and the fear of shame. In a nation that claims to uphold democracy and protect its most vulnerable, this book is an indictment, but it is also a cry for change. For the Indian state to act with urgency and fairness, for civil society to speak truth to power, and for the Kuki-Zo community to break internal silences and center women's voices in our own recovery. Because silence is not peace, forgetting is not healing. Silence Scars is not just a book, it is a demand for justice. Thank you.
Gentlemen, I stand before you today not as a voice of authority, but as a witness, carrying stories carved from pain, scorched by fire, and soaked in silent tears. Stories born from the nightmare that began on the harrowing day of May 3rd, 2023. A nightmare that the Kuki-Zo women continue to relive. Stories of survival so brutal, they blur the line between life and loss. I cannot help but recall the moment my own 70-year-old grandmother was forced to flee into the forest with her family on 4th May, including young children, while a Meitei mob set fire to her village. She watched helplessly as the life she had built together with her late husband, her children and grandchildren were reduced to black smoke and ashes. Everything gone in an instant. I still remember the trembling voice of my aunt, who had just moved into her dream home, built with the savings of a lifetime and the hope of peaceful days spent with family. But instead of finding comfort, she found herself sheltering in silence, swallowed by darkness as flames danced through Langol. She waited in dread, knowing the fire would soon find her, while the mob erased every Kuki-Zo home in its path. But my family story is not an exception. It's a thread in a larger tapestry of pain. From mother to daughter, from elder to child, Kuki-Zo women have borne witness to devastation that no one should have to see. Here are just a few of the many untold stories. One such story is that of Grace Dongaikim. On May 4th, her life, like so many others, was torn apart in an instant. She fled with her family, her mother and son in one car, while she, 9 months pregnant, rode in another. The mob stopped the first car, setting it ablaze before their eyes. She watched in horror as the fire consumed everything, leaving behind only ashes and loss. 2 family members were killed, but by some miracle, her mother and her baby survived. 10 days later, in Dibrugarh, she gave birth to a healthy girl via C-section. Yet, the trauma lingered. Her 1-year-old son cried through sleepless nights, clinging desperately to his mother. Soon after, he began showing signs of autism. What do we call this, if not inherited war? Then there is the story of Lamnaikim Khongsai, who fled on foot through dense jungles, clutching her 4 young children, pregnant, terrified, and barefoot. She delivered her baby shortly after in the chaos of displacement. The child was born with a serious health issue and needed urgent surgery, something nearly impossible in a relief camp with no proper facilities. Her older children, once bright students, were forced to abandon school. There was no classroom to return to, only the passing need to survive. Today, Lamne Kim walks door to door selling vegetables, her infant strapped tightly to her chest. Her journey is not fueled by strength alone, but by necessity, a mother's will to keep her children alive even when the world has turned its back. Research confirms that exposure to violence during pregnancy is associated with miscarriage, preterm birth, and long-term developmental disorders in infants. The war didn't just destroy homes, it rewired the bodies of unborn children. There is a father whose voice now carries the weight of unspeakable loss as he fled with his pregnant wife, Nenghoy Kim Ho-kip, and their children. Hope clung to every passing mile. But help was too far and time too cruel. She bled to death on the road, her life slipping away in front of her children. Their eldest, unable to bear the weight of it all, spiraled into a darkness that led to rehab. And now, one father stands alone with 4 children and a grief so vast, no arms can contain it. Others survive too, but with wounds that do not close and scars that deepen with each passing day. And what of Lingne Kim Lungdim, who gave birth by a C-section on April 30th, only to be hunted down just days later? In a single moment, her world collapsed as her husband and brother were dragged from her arms and killed. She herself was captured and stripped by the Meira Baibis and nearly burned alive. Her newborn daughter, just days old, became her only anchor, the only reason to keep breathing. Today, Lingne Kim and her sister-in-law, both made widows far too soon by this violence, survive hand to mouth, depending on dwindling relief supplies and the fragile threads of community aid. Their grief is not past, it is present, heavy and ongoing. These are not isolated tragedies. These are the stories of a people held hostage by silence. And every war leaves behind its ghost. Tinkoting Sinson, pregnant and fleeing through hills and rivers, gave birth on May 26th. Her body pushed beyond endurance by days of running and hunger. Her baby, born into exhaustion and without care, died just 3 days later. And unfortunately, even her second pregnancy ended in miscarriage. Her body, like her spirit, was never allowed to heal. Each woman I've named, and the many I haven't, lived with the aftershocks. Psychologists speak of toxic stress, a trauma so intense it rewires the brain. Pregnant women in war zones face a 3-fold increase in premature births. Children born in displacement camps often suffer long-term cognitive and emotional delays. But none of this is news to the women of the Kuki-Zo community. They know the statistics because they live them. They nurse babies in relief camps with no water. They mourn lost children with no graves. They teach older children hope while carrying newer ones through poverty. They are widows, mothers, fighters, and survivors, all at once. The camps are closing, aid is thinning, but their need is growing. We owe them more than pity. We owe them justice, healthcare, education, reparations, and the dignity of being heard. Let us not forget that the war did not just destroy homes, it fractured generations. But the women who walked through that fire still stand, and they still hope that their stories will not be buried with their pain, that their children will grow up not haunted but healed. Their stories are not just cries for pity, but calls to conscience. We cannot just listen, we must remember, and we must respond. Thank you.
There is selective empathy, that what happens in the Northeast does not bother people in Delhi too much. We are too distant. I've said this again and again, we share just 1% of our boundaries with India, 99% with foreign countries. Otherwise, for any person who is in power in Delhi, I think this should matter a lot. Recently, I met with Bertel Lindner, and he said that the northeastern frontier is as traumatic as the western frontier, and it cannot be taken for granted. And we know now what is happening in Bangladesh. We actually do not know what is cooking where. We live in very uncertain times. I went through the book which was sent to me as a soft copy, and it made me weep because the very word invisible scars, when you think about it, if you have a cut on any part of the body, you can put medicine, apply some ointment, it will heal. But the trauma inside us, what we've seen happening, the head of David Thake hanging, I think that kind of picture will remain with us forever. And then when we listen to the stories of how people escaped on that night of May 3rd, we just feel that we live in a place which is so very insecure, and there's nobody to help, no one to call out to for help. When I went to the relief camps, the little children, they wanted to have meat. For too long they had been just eating vegetables and eggs. And meat is part of our daily diet, actually, of us tribals. But where could you get all that? We visited the mission hospital. Thankfully, some of the workers from RIMS had come there, and they were able to give some kind of health support, but that was minimal. And this is what is evident when one goes to the hills of Manipur. There is nothing of consequence. There's no institution of consequence in the hills. How was this allowed to happen for now 75 years? How is it that in a state, all the infrastructure is located in the valley? And why did we allow that to happen? What has happened to our voices? What about the people we elected after every 5 years? Why are they not able to make a difference? I think the problem is also with all of us. In a democracy, we are voters and we are supposed to have a voice. But like the storyteller said, as women especially, we have learned to internalize everything. We are told not to speak. And this is a lesson that we have to learn today, that if we have to survive in a country with so many diversities, we need to speak up. We need to form a joint platform for speaking up. Not to shout, not to scream, but to speak with logic and reason and make those people listen to us. Because we are not just, hollering and making all kinds of noises and spitting. And, sometimes I ask myself, where does all that enmity, that anger, that all the toxic talk comes from. As somebody who's written on this issue several papers and online portals, we have also been trolled, and trolled so badly, and called, partakers of the narcotics money and all that. I do not know where all this hatred comes from. And then there are people who are discussing how do we bring peace to this troubled state. I have been thinking, you cannot bring peace when violence has already erupted. The structures for peace have to be built while there is peace in that place. Once violence has erupted, we take very strong positions, and it's difficult to make people come together to have a decent conversation. I hope that such platforms can be created. We need these platforms for peace building in the Northeast. All of us, we are ethnic groups at war with each other. In my own state, the Khalsis and Garos don't see eye to eye. We are fighting over the reservation policy. I think we have to now learn to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that we need to move forward, compete with the best. I think it is this reservation policy also that has made us feel that we are weaklings, that we cannot compete, and all that has been put into our heads. I believe that we can do it. We are as intelligent as anyone in this country and even in the world. Look at the way the narrator, the storyteller told her story. It is so poignant. And I'm thinking, if there is a filmmaker from the Kuki-Zo community, this will make a beautiful story, a story that will last forever. And then I was thinking about documentation. Why is it important to document our stories? Because, as I said earlier, we normalize things very quickly, and we would have forgotten all that trauma that some very unfortunate souls went through. Remember that mother who was taking her son to the hospital and was burned in that ambulance. I mean, how can we expect humans to be so cruel? This is something I'm still asking. And these stories cannot be erased, should not be erased. They should be lessons for the future. I pray that this sort of situation will never arise in the future, that we will learn a few lessons of engagement, lessons on how to engage with the state particularly without calling it names, and to tell those of our representatives that they have been elected with a purpose, not to sort of be collaborators in crime. The violence-induced displacement, I think about this all the time. A home built over many years of hard work and earning is gone away in a moment. How do we rebuild those homes? How do we rebuild a home where we've put so many things also there? It's not just brick and mortar. It's the memories, it's the documents that are there. Many of those people working in Manipur University tried to escape and left behind everything. Now you have to remake all those documents, and this is what makes me really worried. Appropriate moment, and should have switched it off. So I really was caught up by this word trauma voyeurism. Should have switched it off. So I really was caught up by this word trauma voyeurism. You know, the romanticization of trauma. I think this is something we should not do. People have to know what that trauma costs. It costs a lot. And if we have documented that, it's very important that we make these books available to the powers that be. I hope they read it. I really hope they read it. And you've listed the women who were killed. You've listed the number of survivors, 73 pregnant women. And then you've listed also those who died due to lack of medical assistance. How cruel is that? Because you couldn't reach a health center, you had to die in pain. And I'm asking myself, would things have been different under another chief minister? Would it have been different? And why would it have been different? There are many who are complicit in this crime. As Christians, I suppose we can pray for them, that their hearts and minds and souls and spirits will heal, because I don't think, that you can do so much of harm, you can kill so many people, and that karma will not visit. So that is the only thing that we rest our faith on. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. I really hope that some who are scholars here will take up courses of study on conflict management and conflict resolution. These are so important subjects for us in the region. Unfortunately, we don't have a single institution looking at this in the Northeast, where it is most needed. So thank you, and I wish everyone here the very best. May God help us to heal and never to forget what happened. Thank you.
By the Métis outside, they couldn't even cross 1 inch of those camps. All of our people, all, that include our MLAs, that include people in government, that include even lawyers. Think about those people, thousands of our people, the scars that they have gone through. Some of them left after 3 days, some of them left after 6 days. And one more very painful thing of their story, when they were asked to leave Imphal with a one-way ticket. That was really one-way ticket. There was no return ticket. Until today, our people could not enter the valley. The scars of living, the home that they were born and brought up, the home that has a lot of memories. In a simple term, we say our house was burned down. We only think about the structural house. What about the collection that you have in that house? The family albums, the certificate you gather, your children memories, all the old books that you have gathered in those houses, all burned down. This shows that the Métis have just one aim: to eradicate completely, totally, anything and everything to do with Kuki in the valley. And why do they do this? In my little understanding, I think Métis are very, very jealous. It's sheer jealousy. The sheer jealousy of the land that we have. The sheer jealousy that the Kuki-Zo are so educated that we have DGP one after another. They're so jealous that we have this ST quota that give us a lot of IAS and IPS officers.
Hey, We don't discriminate, or we don't kill or abort a fetus because it's a girl, right? In that way, we are egalitarian, but our customary law is not very egalitarian when it comes to giving us that proper rights, equal rights to both men and women. So if that rights has been given and women are not just reduced to women, then the pre-conflict and the post-conflict, the outcome, the health outcome of women may have been different if the situation of the women were already in a very strong positions in the pre-conflict situation. So this is one which come out very strongly in the chapter on Zalain women, liberated women. Liberation in what? I'm not saying we need liberation from men. Men, women, God has created, and it has clearly written in the Bible that we are created to be a partner, to be a companion to each other, not to subjugate each other, right? So this companionship is what is very important when we bring out the kind of laws in terms of our custom, in terms of our culture. There are many things which women can do and men cannot do, and many things which men can do and women cannot do. Recently, I came across this video, one of a Hollywood clip, silent worker behind bringing out this book, the documentation team, and how it happened, how I also happened to contribute one of the chapter in the book. And I was contacted by Zalhai saying that from the conference on the 26th April, which KSO has organized. So there I was speaking on the topic on the crisis when it comes to public health, and my academic engagement is in the area of public health, and I'm a social scientist and heavily engaged into understanding public health and how health cannot be seen in isolation from our governance and from the kind of policy that we are making, which determines the health outcome of the larger population. So Zalhai said, you talk about, when I was talking about the infrastructure, so I was mentioning about how women in the relief team are facing, especially they are the silent sufferer when it comes to our body built up, in terms of our menstrual hygiene and the scarcity of water, how it also compromises those hygiene.
Because these days people don't have time to read newspapers. Most of the news was from the valley, and you know how that plays out. It is a one-track news channel. Most of the journalists who landed also landed up in Imphal. I couldn't go via Imphal for fear of being attacked or whatever. So I took the long road of Dimapur, Kohima, Senapati, and then Churachandpur. You had to go through the Aizawl way. But not so much for the fear of being attacked as the fact that we also carried some relief materials, so we had to go via that way. And when I reached there, I found that there is a drought of information to the rest of the world on what the realities were. All the news that was going from Imphal. Then there were some journalists who carried counterpoints, but they were threatened. It's not a normal situation when you have a conflict. So this is the world of information. We need to be able to control the information. We need to be on top of things, and I think we need to also get out of this victimhood syndrome and not live in that for too long. We have to come out of it. I know it is very difficult, and I know that we actually need several counseling sessions for post-traumatic stress disorders. Just think of those little kids in those relief camps how are they going to grow up? What memories are they going to carry if we do not give time to counsel them, to get them out of that trauma? So I think we have a lot of work to do, and Martin Luther University, which is in Shillong, we are collaborating with one of the colleges in Kangpokpi. We are trying to also get students from there to come to Shillong, Martin Luther University, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of cooperation. So we will continue to collaborate, cooperate. I think you need to build bridges across all those who have the empathy. So, and this is my appeal. Thank you so much.
Very fertile land, and most of the time I think we use our land for just 5 months when we plant paddy, right? And we harvest. Rest of the time the land is mostly not cultivated, and so this is a resource that we're wasting, and we have to find ways of making better use of the land that we have, so that we produce more, so that we can also give better livelihood opportunities to the villages, the women especially. Everything goes back to women, right? Every household, the mother has to hold everything together. So I think this is something that we all need to realize, that we have to do this now. Secondly, another slightly connected but also not connected is question of lost memories. Thanks to this documentation, I think what happened to the women folk this time has been documented very strongly. But if we go back a few years, when the Kuki-Naga problem happened, especially in Tabanglong side, Kangpokpi side, we lost over the years so many villages that we have not documented, because that was a different age, right? Those were not the age of social media, they were not the age of mobile phones. Therefore, a lot of the news also filtered out very late. The Zopi massacre, all of you may have heard of. This is in Tabanglong side, when the villages that side were given a deadline by the NSCN at that time to vacate their villages. But even before the deadline came, they went and attacked the villages and killed entire villages, like the men folk. A few stragglers who escaped told the story, and that's how the world we came to know about it. Forget the world. That's how we ourselves came to know about it. And I remember that time, a group of women, I think this was in fact the first time that the Kuki Women Union was formed, and a group of mothers just landed up in Delhi saying that they have to meet the Prime Minister. And I was in the ministry at that time, and you know, thanks to a few happy coincidences, we knew somebody who worked in the PM's office, and PM actually gave them Narasimha Rao an appointment. And they had no words. They were village women, but they brought a lot of photos, and they just flung it in front of the PM and said, this is what we've come to tell you. And he was shocked, you know, when he saw those photos. So what I'm saying is the importance of documentation. Now we are, I think, better organized, but all those villages that are lost, Ukhrul side, the Tabanglong side, entire area, Kukis have been cleansed. In fact, that was the original ethnic cleansing in the Manipur context. So I think I would especially request, in fact, our scholars, there are many of you here today, we need to work on these lost villages and lost memories. You know, we've done, I think, enough work now on the Anglo-Huki War. We have many books. All of us are, you know, quite well versed about it. But we need to, I think about these lost villages and lost memories, and you know, talk about it. We don't even talk about it. So this is the thought I'd like to leave with you. Thank you.
what is coming to my mind without bringing the disparities in between, when Nirbhaya happened in India, the whole country, all the women of the country congregated at all possible central points of all major cities, including Delhi for sure. But why, when so many women have met with similar kind of experience, why did we not react the way we should have reacted? Why did it remain constricted in certain areas? And I think that's what brings us to the idea of discrimination, not only which is gender-based, which we always try to talk about and internalize it also. It also has got to do with the realms of social identity. And the point I'm therefore making is when a tribal woman meets an experience such as this, when a Dalit woman meets an experience such as this, the battle is of a different kind. And I think Kamla Bhasin has been quoted in the book also, my honor doesn't lie in my vagina. But that's what the community believes, that's what the society believes, irrespective of the fact that vagina is just blessed part of this big body that women have. And one of you have already talked about it. So drawing from there, while it is important to speak about the woes, and I'm sure it's not only women, men have also suffered, but since women's body become a part of the narrative which can be created to fight those battles, it becomes more important to talk about the women's woes, not suggesting that men's woes are not important to talk about. So thank you so much, the young panelists. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable insights, and I could not have let go of this opportunity. So thank you so much. And when you talk about intruding, ma'am, you're not intruding. We are a very welcoming society. I was invited today for the book release, not my husband, but my husband also had come. He also came along with me. So you're not intruding. That is what I would like to say. And last question.